Hi everyone, I've created a quick tutorial just to give you a bit of a heads up with the apple, which is an exercise that's in your pen tool, and I'll also show you how to actually create the colours within the apple itself. So let's get started. You can see that I've already put the apple onto a layer in Illustrator and I have locked it down. Let's create another new layer to start working with. Now before I start drawing, I'm going to make sure that the fill is none, and I'll put a stroke on it, and I might just make the stroke a black stroke so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer, so I'm going to hold down Control or Command on a Mac, spacebar, and that brings up the zoom key, and I'm just going to zoom in like that. I'll go to my pen tool, so that's P on your keyboard, and I'm going to start drawing. Now I'm not going to be too fussed with how this is drawn because I just want to get around it really quickly. So what I'm doing is I've clicked and I'm holding down the mouse key and I'm adjusting the anchor points, and now I want this anchor point here, I want the curve to lead back over this way, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard and I'm going to drag the anchor point back up. Now this isn't the actual pen, this is just the anchor point of this, or the handle of this particular anchor point. So I want it to go back up in this direction, so I'm going to click and drag. And with this new Illustrator version, it's actually got this responsive curve tool. So if I click down there, and I'm going to click right down to the bottom down here, and you can see I didn't quite make that first curve very well, but I will go back and fix that in a moment. I'll get this approximately where I want it. I'll make my next curve. And I'm not doing very well here today actually. Drag this down. It's actually going all over the place. That's okay, I'll fix it up later. So I'm just clicking and dragging. Now I want this curve to come back this way. And you can see just in a matter of moments I've got a more or less simulated curve. Now I'm just going to go in and fix up some of these anchor points for you so that the curve more closely resembles the apple that I'm drawing. This one over here has gone completely wonky. And I'm going to move that into the center and just shape it round. Now you can see I might need to do a bit of an adjustment with these anchor points because they're not kind of, and they're a little bit pointy down there and there. So I can use another new feature of Illustrator, and this is the little curve rotation here. Just going to bend that to make it a little bit nicer. Come across to the other side. Click and drag. You can see what's happening with the point there. Now this one's still not quite right. I'm just going to drag it out a bit. Now I've got this silly thing happening over here. And that's because I've got that extra anchor point in there. I might just go over to the anchor point tool and just grab onto that handle and move that around like that. Okay, that's probably close enough. This one you can see over that side's a little bit funky, and you can see the top's a little bit funky, so actually I'm going to just come back over here. I'm going to click on this one. I'm just going to drag it down and then over here. Now I'm going to need to do a bit of work on that one there. I'll change the actual anchor point itself. And I think I actually need to drag that anchor point to give it a better curve. Let me just zoom in. I haven't done this for a long time. Back to the Director Selection tool, and then I'm just going to round it up like that, and then I can actually hold down the Shift key and click on both those anchor points to select them both. I'm just going to use the down arrows on my keyboard to bring them down slightly. Go back to deselect, come back to this path here, and then just drag that handle out. Oh, and look what's happened over here. What I want is I want this anchor point to be basically here, so I'm going to add a little extra anchor point here. And then I'm going to click on this one, drag it across, and I'm going to change the tool You can tell I'm out of practice. This is taking me far longer than it ever has. Not to worry, here I've got my apple shape. Oh, and I've done the same thing down there. I'm not going to bore you with how you would fix it, but again, you would add in another anchor point here, drag it out, and then just change the type of handle it's got on it. And it's also distorted that down here. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to actually do your colors. Now, this will come in handy for you when you're doing all your assessment tasks, in particular with the gradient task. So I'm actually just going to move it slightly across to the right, and I'm going to create a series of rectangles that approximate the shape of each of the color areas here. So I've created my first one, and now I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and you can see that the actual cursor changes to a double-headed arrow, so that means I can duplicate that line. I'm just going to drag it down and duplicate again, and you can see they're starting to get a bit on the wrong side, so I'm just going to drag that one up a bit. I'll move this one up, drag it up a bit, and it's snapping. I should have turned the snap to off, and I'm just going to duplicate and duplicate and duplicate. So that roughly gives me all of my colors. Now, I'm not going to be too concerned about the alignment. If you wanted, you could align them over onto the left hand side so that they're all exactly neat. Now, I don't want them to have an actual outline on them, but I'm going to leave the outline until I've finished filling them. So now let's just swap over to the fill. So to swap over to the fill, if you press X on your keyboard, and you can see the fill comes up there. And I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool next. So if you hold down I on your, or click down on I, you'll see that the eyedropper tool comes up. So what we want to do is we want to select the color from the background first. So let's select the green. You can see the color comes up here. If I hold down my, I'm just looking for the right combination, the Control or Command key, I can select the thing I want to fill, and then the I tool. Go to the next one, hold down the Control, brings up the Selection tool, click on the item, then the eyedropper. Selection tool, eyedropper, selection tool, eyedropper, selection tool, eyedropper, selection, eyedropper. So now I've got all my colors, and they're all nicely aligned with the image in the background. Let's just move all of these across so that they cover the apple in its completion. And you can see I can still see my apple shape here in the background. Oops, they're not quite wide enough, so I'm going to just drag them all out a little bit. I'm going to select the apple from the background. I'm going to bring it to the front. Just bring it to front. Oh, and you can see I've missed these spaces over here, so I think these need to be a little bit, move this across a little bit more till it fits right in the middle of it. And then I'm holding down the Shift key. I'm going to select the rest of my colors, and I'm going to go into Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and lo and behold, if I turn off that layer there, I have the outline of my apple. Again, I've done this really quickly. You will spend a little bit more time perfecting it. Have fun, enjoy.